My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic multiverse. It's mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
And we do it in space, because everything is cooler in space, right?
Is that like a temperature joke?
It wasn't, but it could have been, and I missed it, and now I'm sad that I missed it.
Well, Beeper, this is our first attempt at kind of settling into every 2 weeks rhythm. Did you enjoy the extra week? Did you feel more rested to come and talk about Firefly and Serenity?
Yeah. Yes, I did. It wasn't the biggest difference, but it did allow for some useful things.
Well, that's good. We're coming up here to the 6th anniversary of the start of the Bat Jar Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
The first episode was released on October 19th, 2016. And just looking ahead, like the October 16th is when we're next set to record, have an episode come out on the 17th. So I know for you, you've been on the show.
It feels like we just did an anniversary thing not that long ago.
We just did the 250th episode. And I say just did. We did it like 6 months ago or something. But even for you, you think about it, coming up in January will be your 3rd year on the podcast. Because you started full-time in January 2020.
Wow, yeah, so I did.
Does it feel like it's been that long?
No, it really doesn't. Although, it's a weird... It doesn't... Like... I know that objectively a lot of things have happened since I started, right? And a lot of them I'm feeling and understanding, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's been 3 years.
Well, let's get into... There's a lot of Dooms delays.
Which is always, we love fun.
Them. The Haunted Mansion, and that's right, Disney's making another Haunted Mansion movie. 20 years...
like the Hocus Pocus one?
No, like the Haunted Mansion's like an attraction at the Disney parks. It was a movie in 2003 with Eddie Murphy.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that at all?
No, but I wouldn't, would I?
Well, it was coming out in March 2023. It's now coming out in August 2023.
Both those dates seem strange for like a spooky movie.
Yeah, at least the August one is closer to Halloween.
It's still 2 months before. I feel like that's not that close.
There was another untitled movie that Disney had on the schedule for August 11th that has now been removed from the schedule. So maybe there was some movie they were developing that they weren't going to move forward with, so they decided to shift it around to have that one come out.
Perhaps.
There was going to be... Did you hear about the Star Wars Rogue Squadron movie?
No.
So this was a movie that was announced, I want to say, like a Disney Plus day or some kind of... It was announced somewhere that Patty Jenkins...
D23?
No, it wasn't D23. It was at least a year ago, but it was announced that Patty Jenkins, who directed the Wonder Woman movies, would be making this movie about the, I guess, pilots in the Rebel Alliance or something.
Okay.
It was supposed to come out in December 2023, but it has also now been removed from the schedule.
I'll just remove. It almost sounds like Disney is realizing they were trying to get way too many products out.
Or at the very
And-
least for Star Wars, like they're
Well,
really...
yeah, like for Star Wars and Marvel, they were like, "Oh wow, we are actually creating too much content. Let's dial it back a little bit."
Now at the time that this change was, there was an unknown movie that Disney had on the schedule that was moved from February 16th, 2024, all the way till September 6th, 2024. But we now know as of this past week that the movie that this is talking about is Deadpool 3.
Oh yeah,
Because Deadpool 3 is now coming out September 6th, 2024. And I'm sure you heard the big news related to Deadpool 3 that
I
came out
did
this week.
indeed.
And how do you feel about Hugh Jackman coming back to play Wolverine again?
I saw the video that Ryan Reynolds released.
That's basically all it was that video.
Yeah, and that video, amazing. The whole idea,
You're not excited to see Hugh Jackman in an actual Wolverine costume?
not really. I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Deadpool. There's no denying that. And I'm excited to see what they can do with it. But I don't know. The classic costume is not one of the things that excites me.
Well, it is for me.
Of course.
Part of me is kind of annoyed he's coming back again. There's some people now who are upset being like, well, Logan was such a beautiful ending to his story. Like, why do they have to bring him back?
Yeah.
That part I'm okay with. Like, it's the multiverse. We can have him play a different version of... In fact, there's some people who even think that the version from Logan isn't like the exact same one from the X-Men movies that he was in before. It was like a different universe.
Okay.
But I saw one person comment like this is an opportunity for both Deadpool, like for Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman to play multiple versions of their character before Deadpool eventually ends up in the MCU, where we hopefully are now introduced to whoever is going to be Wolverine for the MCU. And please make him short. That's always been my one complaint about Hugh Jackman in the part.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty common complaint. I don't know if I always agree with it, though. Like, it worked. Like, he still had not short man energy, but like almost an inferiority complex compared to some of the other characters, and I feel like that.
I'm just trying to get representation for the short people.
Oh, okay, I see. Yes. Oh my. Sorry.
For those who don't know me, I'm average height for a guy, so I'm.
You
not...
just said that, and I suddenly pictured Peter Dinklage, but like with the facial hair from what was it? Not First Class, the one after that.
Days of Future Past?
Yeah, but like Peter Dinklage in his full Days of Future Past facial hair, but in a Wolverine costume, and it's glorious.
I mean, yeah, if Peter Dinklage, he could do it. Okay, did you...
Yeah, but Wolverine isn't that short.
No, of course he's not. He's like 5'3" or something.
Yeah.
Now, did you know that they were making that Sony was making a Kraven the Hunter movie?
Yes, I did. Well, I wasn't sure if it was still happening, but I was aware that that was a thing that was going to happen.
Well, yeah, Aaron Taylor Johnson is playing Kraven the Hunter. It was supposed to come out in January 2023, so like 3 months from now, or however far it is from now till January. It's been delayed all the way till October of 2023.
Okay, but like, who cares about Kraven?
Well,
like, he's a minor Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, okay, let's not get into the ethics of if Kraven should have his own movie or not. I just know for a fact this movie has been filmed. It's like sitting there.
Oh, okay,
and it's now being delayed 10 months, and my question is why? Like the pandemic shouldn't be used anymore as a reason to continue like delay these movies so far ahead.
Nice of you to say reason and not excuse.
Like what is like I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. What is it in? Is it something? Is it because of Morbius? Are
I
they
would,
learning a lesson? Are they filming scenes with a Spider-Man now to make it more like
I
connected
would
to
say there's a
Spider-Man?
good chance it is because of Morbius, personally, but I don't know. Maybe not.
And then they're also making a Madam Web movie, which was supposed to come out on October 6th and is now coming out in February. So that movie has somehow been launched forward in to a closer release.
So maybe something is still happening behind the scenes between Sony and Disney. They're just not talking about it because they don't want people to know. And they're setting up or Sony is trying really hard to set up a Spider-Man multiverse movie of their own, which I mean, Madam Web is a better character for that than Craven.
Perhaps.
Maybe they're getting Garfield to come back for the Madam Web, and they want that first, and they're also filming extra scenes with him for Craven. So they're trying to like set up, not Anthony,
Andrew
Garfield to come back in a big way, and they just don't want anybody to know it.
that sounds good to me. Speaking of Garfield, Sony also has a Garfield animated movie that was supposed to come out in February 2024 that is now coming out in May 2024.
Wow, that is the thing I have cared the least about so far.
What? You're not a fan of Garfield? You and him
if I
have similar vibes.
What?
Not like you're not lazy. I meant to say you have kind of like a like wasn't that grand kind of tone, you know?
I see. A devil may care attitude.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, I guess. That's
Okay,
not the most funny comparison. I don't look. I never liked Garfield that much as a kid, and then
Look, if you're Garfield, I'm Odie. Okay.
I can live with that. But like, I think the big thing is that the thing I enjoyed the most about Garfield is, have you ever watched Garfield Without Garfield?
No, I don't even know what you're referring to.
Okay, so basically somebody just re-released a bunch of Garfield comics but took Garfield out of it, so it just looks like John is having a mental breakdown.
Ooh.
It's really entertaining and a little bit unnerving, as your reaction as accurately surmised. But it's really funny, and also I'm just going to quickly plug one of my favorite YouTubers. Super Eye Patch Wolf has done a great video called "What the Internet Has Done to Garfield," and there are things I cannot unsee from that video. And if you want to enjoy that animated movie, watch that video afterwards. But it is really well made.
You do love your buddy Super Eye Patch Wolf, that's for sure.
Yep. But also, I don't know. There's all of that, and then also, let's be honest, the Garfield movies don't have a good history either.
Fair enough. Have you seen any of the promos for this movie Amsterdam that's coming out?
I've seen that they exist. I have no idea what it is.
It was supposed to come out November 4th, and it's actually been moved up to October 7th, so it's coming out like this coming weekend.
Oh, okay.
I'm mostly interested in it because of the cast. It has this, like it's just said, like the description says, in the 1930s, 3 friends witness a murder and are framed for it and uncover one of the most outrageous plots in American history. But what's crazy about this movie is it has a huge cast. It has, like, the main leads are Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, and John David Washington.
Okay.
But then in the mix, there's Robert De Niro, Rami Malek, Taylor Swift, Mike Myers. I'm forgetting a bunch of... It has this Chris Rock. It has this very diverse cast of actors that I would never think to see in the same movie.
So it's It's a rehash of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Well, that one kind of isn't that movie about like a car race of some kind or something?
So the remake Rat Race kind of is, but It's a Mad, 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 Mad World is actually there's a bunch of people who discover this, this old criminal who tells them where he put all of his loot at the end of his career, and then they all start racing for it, and the cops are keeping track of them because the cops don't know where it is. So they're keeping tabs on the people who are going for it because they know that they've discovered where it is, but they're not. But they're trying to so they're letting them get away with a bunch of infractions, and they're trying to pretend that they're not doing that, and they're trying to just be subtle about it. But what I meant isn't that they are remaking the story. What I meant is that it was a very big all-star cast, in large part because it was filmed at a time when actors were still on contract with studios.
Right.
So they had to be in whatever. If the studio said you have to be in this movie, they had to be in the movie, right? And as such, you have just a veritable who's who of actors in it that wouldn't have normally done movies together, but we're all in this one movie. Most of them in kind of cameo roles, but still, it's that's what I meant. But it feels a little bit like that, where they just threw everything at the wall,
Totally.
see what sticks.
Anya Taylor-Joy's in the movie. Chris Rock, yeah, Timothy Oliphant's in it. Zoe Saldana's in it.
Timothy Oliphant is the guy who played Paul in the Dune movie, right?
No, you're thinking of Timothée Chalamet.
Yes, that is what I was thinking about.
Timothy Oliphant played the guy who had Boba Fett's armor in The Mandalorian.
Oh, okay,
the
yeah.
Marshall guy. Michael Shannon's in this. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this. It looks like it'll be a lot of fun.
I mean, it sounds like an exciting movie. I still don't know what's happening in it.
Yeah. I can only imagine Disney's moving the release date up because they want to move it farther away from Wakanda Forever, which comes out the week after when this was supposed to come out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. They don't want to, because Wakanda Forever should probably cannibalize a lot of other things.
Yeah. And then finally, they talk about a fourth Star Trek movie for a while, and it had a release date for December 2023, but it has now been removed from the schedule.
Again, I don't know. The last one didn't do great.
I enjoyed it. Beyond.
Yeah, but it objectively did not do well. It didn't perform well, is what I mean.
Very good lead into today's conversation.
Yeah, that's true.
Apparently what happened with this is that they had a plan for Kirk through time travel team up with his father, who, if people will remember, back in 2009 when the first Chris Pine Star Trek movie came out, it was actually Chris Hemsworth who played his father.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And it came down to contract negotiations. They wanted more money than the studio's willing to pay. And so that was the latest thing that kind of stalled the production of this next Star Trek. But I mean, Star Trek seems to be doing quite well for itself on TV. There's the Lower Decks, Picard, Discovery, and brand new Brave New World or Strange New World. So I don't know if I'm not a Trekkie. I've always been clear about that. It seems like Star Trek works better as a TV thing than a movie thing.
Well, I mean, as far as I understand it, 50% of the time you're right. There's this kind of... Are you not aware of that? The kind of thing that every second Star Trek movie is good.
Oh, right.
And then the next one is terrible.
That would make sense, except Into Darkness, I think, is the worst of the 3 new Star Trek movies, and that's supposed to be the second one.
Well, but you could argue that they offset it. They started with a good one and then got a bad one and a good one, which means this next one would be bad. if we keep following that logic.
Right. Fair enough. So when do you think we're gonna stop getting Doom's delays? Because eventually they're gonna just catch up, right?
Um, maybe, but also, but you can't discount the possibility that we also might just, like I know we kind of talked about it when the pandemic started, like when we were doing the podcast, like when Doom's delay started being a thing, we started talking about like, well, maybe it just will not go back to the way things were, and maybe this is a permanent change that's happening. You know,
Like you're saying that we'll never really catch up because there's always going to be
something
and
that's going to be changing. Yeah.
like Box Office Mojo created a new feature for their website to track movie release date changes during the pandemic when there weren't very many movies coming out, and they're still finding ways to use it because there's still movies getting pushed around.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's kind of what we're looking at potentially as just the new reality of the film industry.
yep, that's fair. I know I was starting to build the list of comic book movies that we were going to talk about at the end of the year, and I realized that because of all the shifts that have happened, Wakanda
Half
Forever
of them
will
got
actually
canceled.
yeah, there's like 4 movies that got shifted into the next year, so I think Wakanda Forever will be the last comic book movie of the year. I think there's a One Piece movie coming out and getting a theatrical release in November as well, but
In North America too.
yeah, North America.
Okay.
It's called Red. I assume it's an original story like all the other movies have been, unless that sounds like something significant.
I don't know. Well, it might be a bit. It might be a little bit like what the I can't remember the one with Shiki the Lion. I can't remember the title of it. Like it was a one-off, but it was canon events
I see.
that were referred to in the manga before and after. So it might be. I'm assuming. Sorry, I'm assuming from that title, it's a Red Shanks origin movie or something about him in the past. And being as his role is starting to shift, and there's a lot of interesting things surrounding him in the manga at this point, that may very well actually be a movie that has elements that are relevant to the story but are happening in the past. So it might be like a flashback movie, but that will give information that is still like going to be exciting for the series.
Gotcha. So today we are talking about Firefly and Serenity.
Yeah, we are.
Because the sheet of paper with those things written on it was finally pulled out of the bat jar. However, I must have forgotten it was in there because indeed we kind of broke our own rules for our episode 100 and talked about Firefly back in October of 2018.
What did we say about Firefly?
I don't remember. What I remember
Okay.
about that, what I remember about that episode is Asian John. It was like towards the end of Asian John's time on the show. We recorded in that basement studio where you did your first episode. If you
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah,
And
the
there
One
were,
Piece episode, I think it was.
yeah, it was for the same place as the One Piece episode. And then we had 2 guests that week. Dr. What was there, and then so was Dee Dee. So there were 4 of us, and Dee Dee had one of her kids with her, so there was occasionally like some child noises in the background. So that was probably the most in-person people we ever had on a podcast. That's what I remember about it, not necessarily what we discussed. I think we talked a lot about why the show was success, or why it was a good show, but also getting into all the reasons why it didn't succeed. All the reasons that Fox kind of screwed the show over.
Yeah, I don't remember having that discussion, but I mean, we're still talking about a show and a movie, so we could
Yeah, we also did an episode in June 2019 on cult classics where we talked about among other things the brown coats and how they are a dedicated fan base that has kind of helped make Firefly and Serenity a household name.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember though, like in terms of a secret origin segment here, I don't know when I would have first heard of Firefly. I think it might have been when I started living with One Shot and he had the DVD of it. And just knowing that the show existed that way, not necessarily. I didn't actually sit down to watch it until I had to review it for that episode. But you would see people at Comic Cons dressed as the characters, and Jane's like toque was a very popular thing I would see people wearing.
My origin story is a little weird. Because, like, so I never watched I first watched the show when I was in university, when I was living with my sister, because there was a video rental store that had a bunch of, like, they had, like, a Netflix deal where you would, get unlimited rent, like, up to 3 rentals at a time, but unlimited. As soon as you brought one back, you'd get another one over a month for a flat fee.
That sounds amazing.
It was. It was amazing. It was Jumbo Video on Maryvale. I think it closed down since, but
R.I.P. Jumbo Video.
Yeah, but it was great. So it was about the same price as Netflix, and so they had a bunch of series on DVD, and so one of them that we started watching was Firefly, because I'd vaguely heard about it being good from a lot of different people. I remember hearing a lot of jokes about, I also remember something that I didn't realize was a reference to it, and a few other things, but like there's a joke in Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, and it's like, you'll be canceled faster than you can say created by Joss Whedon. So there were random things that I knew about it, but one of the big things was that my older sister, without having seen the show, went to watch Serenity in theaters when she was in high school, and talked to me about the movie, but in very vague senses, because like her friends had seen Firefly and wanted to go see the movie, but she hadn't. So she was telling me the story of what happens in the movie, but without having any of the context. So that was my first introduction, was actually to Serenity, not Firefly. And then I watched Firefly and realized what Serenity, like what the movie my sister had seen was, and then watched Serenity afterwards.
So you were the opposite of your sister. She saw the movie first.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that was the better way to go about it, was watching the show first and then the movie?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, because the movie still works kind of as a standalone, though not, I don't know, not nearly as well if you don't have the context. And some of the things that you need, you don't need the context, but it just, it makes it more emotionally investing. You get more emotionally invested in it because of it.
Right. Let's assume someone has not watched our previous episode on Firefly. What would you say is like the Blu-ray case description for Firefly?
Oh, I should have grabbed. I have the DVD of the series, but it's a good old classic Western in space where a crew of misfits on the eponymous Firefly ship are traveling around, trying to escape the government and trying to do some good somewhat, because they're still kind of mercenaries.
I thought the ship was called Serenity.
The ship is, yes, it's a Firefly class ship, which is called Serenity. It's like Cowboy Bebop. It's named after the type of ship, not the name of the ship.
Don't they call the ship in Cowboy Bebop the Bebop, though?
They refer to it as the Bebop, but that is not the name of the ship. I don't know if it has an official name, but Bebop is the type of ship it is.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought up Cowboy Bebop
because it's the same show. No, but there's a lot of similarities. Both shows are mostly focused around characters who are more or less fully formed already. People who already have their own points of view and are just interacting with each other and with random situations.
They have backstories that get kind of alluded to via flashbacks.
Yeah, and slowly discovered. It has... it also has, like... Both of them kind of have the crew struggling to make ends meet because every time they take a job, they end up not doing exactly what they were supposed to because they're fundamentally kind of good people.
Now, had you seen Cowboy Bebop by the time you had started watching Firefly?
Yes, I had.
Because I still haven't finished Cowboy Bebop. It's on my long stalled list, but I had started watching it by the time I saw Firefly, and the parallels were abundant and clear, and you could tell that unfortunately Firefly was working on a budget because it had to do everything in live action, so it there's a lot of scenes of just people talking on ships as opposed to seeing some of the stuff that again Cowboy Bebop could do because it was animated, so it didn't have to worry about budget as much.
Yeah. I mean, it's yes and no. I mean, animation still costs money, and
Yes,
I
but
think
it's
it's
easier
more.
to animate a spaceship flying through
Yeah,
the air than
no,
it is
that's true.
to.
It is easier. It's just you have to be careful with that statement because Cowboy Bebop was actually a very high end production as well.
Fair
But
enough.
you are right that especially at the time, doing animation for like 2D special effects were a lot better than CG special effects and a lot less world breaking. So it does help a lot. Yeah.
And I ran out of time. I couldn't finish watching Firefly before we did the 100th episode. And I thought, oh, for this episode that we're doing right now, I'll just watch the movie. But then when I went on Disney Plus, Serenity isn't there. And I was like, what the heck? And then I started researching, and then I realized it wasn't Fox that released Serenity in theaters. And so they, like, to this day, Disney/Fox still don't have the rights to Serenity. You can watch all of Firefly on Disney Plus, but you can't watch Serenity because it was put out in theaters by Universal Pictures.
Okay.
And it's not available on
you
any
ended up
streaming
just
service.
watching all of Firefly instead.
I watched the very last episode of Firefly, and then I watched some YouTube videos talking about Serenity. So,
Watch the whole. Okay.
so I've
Yeah.
seen like the first 6 episodes of Firefly and the last one.
Okay, that's not the worst way to. Yeah, no, that's actually pretty good.
And thankfully, the order that they're in Disney Plus it seems like it's the production order, like the intended.
Oh, not the release order.
Not that, because for people who didn't watch the last episode, Fox was not pleased with Firefly, the Fox TV network. They were expecting more of a comedy and more of an action-driven show, whereas this was more like a character piece and was more about the relationships between the people. So they aired an episode that involves like a train heist first to try and get people interested, and then they just sort of aired a bunch of the episodes out of order, which in a show that's based on character development and character interactions, it was confusing for people trying to sit down and watch the show when they're watching these episodes out of order. And they put it on Friday nights, which someone did the math. Over the course of 26 years on the Fox network, there were 40 different shows that ended up being canceled. So to this day, if you get put on a Friday night time slot as a TV show for prime time, it's pretty much a death sentence for your show.
Unless you are the greatest show ever.
I thought you were going to actually call out a specific show there, but you just mean it would have to be the greatest thing ever in order.
Yeah, exactly. Like you need to be very, very good.
And it's like, who goes and who sits down to watch TV on a Friday night? Like that's when you go to the movies or you go out and do something in the world,
Yeah. That's true. And most people would look at that, but I feel it. But it is also, we kind of no longer exist in a world of primetime TV.
No, that's also true. So you got to watch the show as it was intended to be watched in the right order on DVD. It wasn't marketed to you the wrong way as it was for people watching it on Fox in the fall of 2002.
I'm pretty sure that because the DVDs I have not only made a point of putting it in the right order, but also added one or two. I think they added like the episodes that weren't released as well.
Yeah, because the show
because
was
that's
actually
another thing.
canceled
Some of the
before the
some of
first season even finished.
yeah. So I think they played the last episode, right? But they didn't like play the other ones because it got canceled.
Now, when you were watching it, do you recall, like, did it ever come like, did you ever ask the question, like, why was this canceled? This seems like a really good show.
I never asked it actually. I don't think I know, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the
Because
reasons
it is a very good show.
yeah, I mean, the reasons I've mentioned, it was falsely marketed as an action comedy series, which it's clearly not.
Yeah.
Episodes were aired out of order. It was shown on Friday nights, and then it wasn't performing, so they canceled it before they had even aired all the episodes. And people look to the brown coats, the fans of Firefly, as really being one of the early examples of a fan community really rallying around a show or a franchise that they love.
Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty big deal.
Because back in 2002, there really weren't, like, there was no Facebook. Social media didn't really exist yet. So fans are connecting online through like message boards, which I've never really seen a message board. I've only ever heard about them.
Yeah.
Apparently they like pooled their money and bought advertising in Variety magazine telling the owners of the property to be like, we will go see it or we will buy it if you make it. DVD sales were really high. Like apparently fans also pooled money to buy copies of the DVD for Firefly so that people in the military who were like overseas could essentially get a copy of the show and watch it. I don't think I would ever spend my own money to try and
to make somebody else watch a show so that it would become popular.
Yeah, like to be that.
I don't. I might for Soul Eater. Because there was a similar thing. Like, there were people, not on the same scale, but there were a lot of people trying to get... I know the fandom tried really hard to get the DVD sales up because that was the only way it would work. Like, it would ever get a re-release or get rebooted or be a real thing again.
They just made Fire Force instead.
Yeah. Which is not bad. It's just I want Soul Eater to be released.
And they also did that Soul Eater not thing. That was kind of continuing Soul Eater.
Yeah, but but Soul Eater not was a spinoff of the manga, not a spinoff of the show. So
I know.
Like, it was actually really weird them trying to do that because it's different.
Yeah. I say all this, I was fully bought into the Saving Young Justice campaign. Like I bought a PS3 video game that was based on Young Justice, even though I didn't own a PS3. I just wanted to put in my money.
There you go. We all have something we'll do.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And I think this is hilarious. We've seen a lot of this fan response stuff in the last couple years. Just this past week, it was announced that Community is finally going to get a movie on Peacock because of the fans of that show. And then, of course, we've had the whole Sonic the Hedgehog thing. We have the Snyder Cut. And arguably, you look at the stuff with the Browncoats and Firefly, the early days of that. So that was a situation where we wanted more Joss Whedon because people wanted to have his characters come back. And then here comes the Snyder Cut trying to get rid of Joss Whedon.
Yeah. Although, for very different things, right? Joss Whedon has always had a very big fan base and a very, specific following for for the things he's done, and the things he's done have been very different from things, are very different from what Justice League was, right? That really wasn't his wheelhouse.
No, I suppose not.
Like, not only what Justice League was as of itself, but even just DC, the DC universe, the DCEU, or DC movies at all.
Yeah. And you can't talk about Firefly or Serenity without bringing up Joss Whedon. He is the creator of the TV series. He's the main writer for the show. He wrote the movie and he directed the movie. And Serenity, the film, was his directorial debut as a filmmaker. So arguably, you could say that if he never directed Serenity, he would never have been able to get to the point of directing Avengers or Age of Ultron, which maybe he would have preferred if he hadn't got to that point.
Yeah, maybe because like he was big in TV and worked in TV, right? So to suddenly be different would it created a new way for him to work, which didn't work nearly as well for obvious reasons.
So Firefly was canceled towards the end of 2002, and the fan response was rabid. People were trying to convince Fox to renew the series. And then in 2003, someone at Universal Pictures reached out to Joss Whedon and said, like, we want to work with you. We want to do a project with you. What would you like to do? And he said, I'd like to, do a movie for my series Firefly, because it was ended quicker than I would have liked. And they kind of agreed to it, thinking, oh, like Fox won't give up the rights, so we'll agree to this, and then it'll come down to Fox saying no. But Fox relented. Their only condition was you can't call it Firefly.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And Universal agreed to make the movie under the condition that he would spend less than $40 million on the budget. Which, if you think about, for that time, the movie ended up being released in 2005. Blockbuster movies kind of like Serenity were they had budgets of like $100 million at this point. So for him to have a budget of only $39 million.
But I feel like it was also a thing where the actors probably, like, because some of the actors had become a little bit bigger in the main time as well.
Yeah.
Like, some of them probably didn't, like, ask for as much money as they probably could have or would have at the time, because of the fact that a lot of them wanted to get things done. And I mean, because I'm pretty sure Alan Tudyk even starred in a movie about like the idea of being a star from a TV show that did really well, but did very well after it was canceled. Like, it's a very meta thing, but they did like the show.
Yeah, and Joss Whedon, he wanted to film in his hometown of Los Angeles, so they couldn't save money there by filming in a cheaper location. And he was very adamant that they brought back all the cast from the TV show. So yeah, they couldn't save any money there. Arguably because they were all basically TV actors. Maybe they did save some money, but ultimately, I have not watched Serenity yet, but I've watched the trailer and I've watched people talk about it. It seems like it's really only noticeable in the visual effects that the budget was small.
Yeah.
Like the visual effects for 2005, like that's the same year Revenge of the Sith came out. And they don't look convincing at all.
No, but at the same time, I mean, it's almost like it was a TV movie.
Yeah, but unfortunately it wasn't a TV movie.
I know, but I feel like people still kind of did that.
Like you're saying the people making it treated like a TV movie?
No, but like the people who watched it were like, you know what? This, like, I think people gave it the benefit of the doubt a little bit because of that. Because it was based on TV? I
guess. Apparently Universal was really hoping this would become a big franchise because they asked everyone to sign 3-picture deals, like all the actors. But Alan Tudyk and the guy who played the pastor, or shepherd, neither of them could commit to multi-year deals because they had other projects they already had lined up. And apparently that is why their characters end up dying in Serenity.
Interesting.
Which, that specific detail was spoiled for me years ago because I was at Comic-Con in 2014. Alan Tudyk was there, and someone asked him about his character's death in Serenity, and I was like, oh, I guess his character dies in Serenity.
Oh, can I give the punchline of the joke I started at the
yes,
end of
last
course.
Episode?
Yeah, so how do reavers clean their harpoons? They put them through the wash.
Oh, Oh,
Wash is the name of Alan Tudyk's
Yes,
character, and
yes.
he gets killed by being impaled with a harpoon. I think that's an
Yep.
important addition.
Now, the people I've heard on YouTube talk about Serenity say that their deaths seem kind of jarring. And I guess once you know, it was because they felt like they had to write them out of the story. If it was going to continue, it kind of makes sense, or you can understand why it happened.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is a bit jarring. But it's also like Serenity was weird because it really doesn't feel like they made that movie expecting it to go for 3 in some ways, because it did feel like they closed a lot of loops, not just with the characters who died, but with a few other questions. Like there were still some questions left unanswered, but it did feel like they were still trying to conclude things in case it didn't work. So maybe Joss Whedon didn't believe it would make 3 movies. Maybe he just wanted to tell the story and then have to add on things afterwards, as other directors or creators have had to do with their content when it stayed popular, and as he had to do himself, because Buffy was supposed to end after 4 seasons, and he was forced to stretch it to twice that length. So like, I feel like there is maybe an aspect of that it was still a little bit terminal. Although I feel like the pastor's death is much worse because he had a more interesting character and
Yeah, he had a lot of
questions in
unanswered
Firefly.
questions.
Yeah, he had a lot more. Whereas Wash was just a guy.
I've also heard a complaint about Serenity is that the majority of the crew really don't have much to do in the movie, that they're just sort of there.
Yeah, that's true.
Which, if you're like a fan of the show, it's great to see them. But if you're someone who's brand new, like if there was any goal for this movie to bring in new audiences, to have several characters who really don't have a role in the story, it just makes it kind of confusing.
Yeah.
And Joss Whedon spoke about the challenge of writing a movie where 9 of the characters already know each other.
Yeah,
And you have to write it in a way that acknowledges the series happened, but also finding a way to make it accessible to new people.
And that's particularly difficult because they are characters that were written for a show that revolved heavily around characters discovering things about each other and getting to know each other, right? So, like, to put them in a movie that changes that dynamic, even though they were specifically created for that dynamic, poses a challenge for sure. And again, and this is something that's quite common for like any movie based on a TV show, even things like, the Dragon Ball Z movies. It's like, we'll throw Piccolo and Tien a little fight at the beginning that Tien will lose to Piccolo just because we wanted him to be there, but really he's not important, right? Like, Goku will fight somebody, Vegeta will fight somebody, maybe Krillin will do something. But generally, you're going from, long form storytelling to short form, and it's very difficult to make that transition.
Yeah, and it sounds like, again, I still haven't seen the movie, but it sounds like for fans of the franchise that they enjoyed it. The problem is that not enough people went and saw the movie. Universal decided to do this strategy where they showed early screenings of the movie. Like, the movie came out at the end of September 2005, and starting in May 2005, they started having these early screenings in up to 35 cities, like course of through May and June of 2005. And so they figure probably about 100,000 brown coats got to go and watch the movie early, months before it was released. The strategy apparently was to build hype around the movie by fans seeing it first and then becoming like evangelists to try and get all their friends to go see it when it actually was released. But this didn't work out because when the movie came out at the end of September 2005, it globally, not just domestically, but globally made $40 million. So it basically broke even on the budget that was spent on it, and that's excluding advertising costs.
Yeah.
So to the browncoats, I say, you had your chance. They brought your thing back, and not enough of you showed up for it.
Yeah. But it is also a difficult thing to try to do, like bring enough people to save a franchise. Like, it was a tall order to begin with.
And a different, as you said, different form of storytelling. There's lots of examples now of shows that were canceled and then revived somewhere else. Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine was canceled on Fox, and then almost immediately it was picked up by NBC, and it kind of finished its run there. But it continued as a TV show, whereas it didn't try to turn into a movie.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the big thing though is that actually I'd be interested. Did the DVD sales for the movie kind of have the same thing as for the show, where like it was disproportionate to the success it originally had?
It does not really say anything about how it did on DVD. I'm looking at commentary about it. Says that, you know, plans for a sequel were kind of contingent on the DVD sales going strong, and since a sequel never happened, I assume that they weren't strong enough.
Okay. I just thought it'd be funny.
And now we get to the question of, should this get a second or a third chance at life? As we're living in 2022, it's quite normal for old franchises to come back into relevance. Just looking at this year, Top Gun Maverick, highest grossing film of the year. Cobra Kai is in its 5th season. You know, these nostalgic properties. Maybe it's not long enough, since maybe we need to wait another decade for Serenity or Firefly to come back.
Mm.
And then the Joss Whedon question, right?
Yeah,
he has
Joss
fallen
Whedon
from
still,
grace.
Yeah, is he still a marketable director?
And can, you know, this kind of brings in the whole mangaka perspective. Can Firefly Serenity exist without him? Is it possible that another writer creative can come in and steer that ship?
Yeah, and I think it also has the added question of like, it's been so long.
But I've listened to interviews with Nathan Fillion. He still gets asked questions about if Firefly's going to come back. So I think there is still interest. I just don't know with the state of Joss Whedon's image, if he would be welcomed back, and if they tried to do it without him, what would that do within the brown coats? And could it be done successfully without him? I don't know, because I don't know how. Yeah, it's difficult for me to know how much of what made Firefly good was like his strong vision over it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another reason to like let some time pass, because maybe like James Gunn, there will be some forgiveness and he'll be more accepted in the public space. Who can say?
Perhaps. I mean, but I also think that it's harder. It is harder for directors because they need to do something really, direct.
Well, I mean, like, do you want to see more from this world? Because you got to kind of experience everything that was available all at once. You got to see the show and the movie, you know, years after they had already been made available.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Would you,
Like,
you don't want to see, like, I guess they're all older now. You don't want to see like the veteran versions of all these characters.
no, like that's the thing. Like if it was if it was possible to start it and get back to that, I wouldn't mind. But
What if it was like Cobra Kai, where there's a handful of the original characters there, and through them and where they're at now, you're introduced to a whole new set of characters in the world?
maybe, but even there, I don't think it necessarily answers the questions we want answered.
Right. So if you were to, if what I'm hearing you say is if the show or movie or, you know, the series came back, you would want it to kind of answer unresolved plot points from the
Yeah,
show.
that's the thing.
mean, Blade Runner 2049 kind of did that. It kind of answered like the is Harrison Ford a replicant thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like the things about the world. I mean, I guess maybe, but I also don't see a good way for some of those characters, except maybe the mechanic to still be around, and like Nathan Fillion's like Mal could be somewhere, but most of them don't really fit the kind of role that could be.
I mean, I feel like seeing Zoe so many years later after her husband's died should be an interesting character, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm totally indifferent to this franchise. I'm just trying to think of like if it did come back, how could it come back at this point? Because
Yeah.
I know Ron Glass has passed away, so like I know Shepard's dead, but they couldn't even really like use him for flashbacks. Now, okay, going back to Serenity.
Yeah.
Do you think this was an impossible task to try and create a movie that pleased the fans and set up interest in like the general public audience?
Yeah, I do think so.
But you would say it succeeded at pleasing the fans.
Yeah, it still was enough.
So you're quite comfy with it not coming back. Like you feel like the ending they got was good enough.
Yeah, it doesn't need to keep going.
I know there have been some comic book adaptations of Firefly that I think try to address some of the unresolved things. Maybe that's the way forward to, they call it being actor safe. You don't have to necessarily worry about specific actors playing, or maybe it's an animated thing. I know for a fact the majority of the Firefly cast have done voice acting in DC related products. In fact, some of them have played multiple DC characters in different shows. Like
Yeah,
Nathan Fillion was Vigilante in Justice League Unlimited, and then he was Green Lantern in a bunch of movies.
but that also I think that also just kind of has to do with the whole, like TV actors being more likely to, um, go into voice acting.
I suppose. I like to think that they were intentionally just trying to get all those actors involved in DC
Maybe.
products. Like even Sean Marr ended up being Nightwing in a lot of the direct-to-video movies. I'd never heard of him before that.
I suppose.
So we can agree Firefly was good. Was, I guess, a little ahead of its time. It's a good case study to show how a network can really screw over a TV show. Serenity was an early example of fans rallying together to bring something back. But at this point, I think it's our consensus that there's no need for this to come back.
No. I think maybe the only thing would be like a different medium returning to the universe. Maybe.
Ooh, what if it was like a complete spinoff? Like what if it's still the world, but it's like none of the same characters? Like 100 years later.
That could be interesting, but I don't. Hey. But I feel like at that point, you'd either have to have had too many things change. Like, I don't know, the whole how did the Reaver come about? What's the relationship with the government? How did that work out? Like, I think it would almost be better to have like a flashback series and then like maybe 10-year in the future.
Hmm. And at this point, it's actually hard to watch the whole series in one place because Firefly is on Hulu in the US and Disney Plus in Canada, but Serenity isn't. It's probably on Peacock. Actually, if it's a Universal movie, it's probably on Peacock in the United States, but we don't got no Peacock here, so it's on no streaming service in Canada.
Okay.
So it's kind of impossible for people to, unless you live in the States and you're paying for both Hulu and Peacock. So there you go. Firefly and Serenity are out there. I think they're worth watching, even though I haven't seen Serenity yet. I'm sure once it becomes available on a streaming service I have access to, I will watch it.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
Normally we would go inside the Bat Jar to pull a topic for next week or the next time we have an episode, but She-Hulk will have concluded by the time we record next, so we can do another post-mortem. I know it'll be interesting to talk about She-Hulk, having just done our episode kind of dissecting the MCU shows so far.
Yeah.
Have you been keeping up with it at all?
Not completely, but we did about half of it so far, and I am
So
planning
far,
on finishing it.
I think this is one that actually like warrants itself being a show as opposed to a movie.
Well, I hope so, because if not, it would have been terrible.
I think leading into like the lawyer lawyer procedural element,
Yeah.
kind of makes it feel more like a TV show, but we'll get into it next time. At the point of recording this episode, the Daredevil episode hasn't come out yet, so I don't know if that was ended up being terrible or not. I'm hoping it's great.
Yeah. Hopefully.
So come back to the Batshar podcast in 2 weeks when we talk about She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
This is a podcast about us, not other people.